Today I wanted to talk about something that I've done extensive research on, and I've also have a bit of a background on because of my major. And the thing that I wanted to talk about was hydrogen fusion. Now before we get into that, imagine this. A almost limitless source of energy that produces zero carbon emissions, and it also lasts longer. Now I'm not talking about going electric, I'm talking about going with hydrogen fuel, specifically hydrogen fusion. Now what exactly is hydrogen fusion? Hydrogen fusion is when there are two hydrogen atoms that collide, and when they collide they release energy and they produce another molecule called, or another element called helium. So it's A and B, they collide and energy is then released. And so this process happens within our sun. You're probably thinking, well, why do I need to know this? So that way you can get a better grasp on the solution that we can present. And so before we get to the solution, I like to present the problem. The problem today is with the fuel resources that we're using, they produce too much carbon emissions, and they are polluting the Earth's atmosphere. And my solution to that would be going with hydrogen fusion. And the reason why I suggest hydrogen fusion is because A, it's a cleaner source of energy, and B, it lasts longer. Now, besides taking care of the only planet that we have, there's also another problem I would like to talk about, but it's not as important as the first one, and that is we are kind of stagnant in where we are with our technology. So as far as I know, we do not have that many fuel cell we don't have that many cars that run off of hydrogen fuel, and it's mainly just battery electric and fossil fuels. And battery electric still uses fossil fuels to make the parts that we need. And so you're probably thinking, well, how is this relevant to me? Well, the reason why I say it's relevant, or why I believe it's relevant, is because in 2021, an article that was posted on newsnation.com, the average amount of money spent on gasoline was $1,837, and that was just this past year alone, back in October, compared to back in 2020 where it was $1,230. And you're probably thinking, well, that's a lot of money spent on gas, and you're right. And so what I would like to say is, if we were to switch to hydrogen fuel, as I mentioned, since it's going to last longer, it could bring down the cost just by a little bit, not by a lot. I'm not saying it'll bring it down to like, oh, 800, but probably down a good amount to where it seems, where it doesn't seem that bad. Another thing, as I mentioned before, is that besides the fossil fuels causing pollution, it's also the fact that we use electricity. And so, according to edpa.gov, it states that almost 29% of greenhouse emissions come from fossil fuels. And then also on that same website, it states that 25% of greenhouse emissions, besides the 29% mentioned earlier, comes from electricity. And the reason for that being is because we use electricity to power everything, and those power plants run off of fossil fuels. And so I would like to say that not only will it lower emissions, but it'll also cut costs. Another thing that I wanted to mention is that besides cutting costs and lowering emissions, it will help us further advance ourselves as a human race. We'd be able to go to the stars further and farther away, since the fuel that we would be using would be hydrogen fusion, and it wouldn't deplete as fast. We wouldn't have to refuel as much since it lasts longer. As a matter of fact, it has been reported by NASA that the estimated cost for them to just fuel a rocket was 500,000 plus just to fuel a rocket, and for NASA it takes like about $1.8 million just to fuel up. But the crazy thing about that is that it uses liquid hydrogen, and so I would say that one way to fix that and to lower costs with that when it comes to refueling constantly would be to use a hydrogen fuel cell. And so if we were to use a hydrogen fuel cell, it would more than likely last longer than just refueling and then going up and then just depleting our fuel resources in the rocket. So to wrap this up, I would like to say that I hope that after hearing this speech, you got a better knowledge on what exactly hydrogen fusion is, and I hope that you can see that hydrogen fusion would be very beneficial towards the environment because it would help lessen carbon emissions, and it'll help overall with just pollution, not only overall with pollution, but with our technological advancements as well. And to finally close this off, for now we're just stuck with whatever resources we have, but soon we'll make the switch over and we'll not only be using a cleaner energy source, but it'll also last longer